Hey, second time lucky. I'm such a moron. We didn't even go live yet. So, yeah, let's just run it right from the top again. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday stream. I'd love to introduce you to Ben Diesel. I ran into Ben Diesel online. I saw some of his SE videos on YouTube. And I said to myself, hey, we've got to interview this guy. This is, this is an opportunity that we shouldn't miss. So, Ben, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and, what is it like for you as an atheist in the community that you live in? How do your friends react to it? How did your co-workers and your immediate family, what's the fallout been like?
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I've came out as an atheist about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I think I was more, I probably would have identified with the label earlier, but it just was a situation where I didn't care enough to actually explore that question. And at some point I said, okay, no, listen, if I'm wrong about this, I might be in trouble. So let me do some more research into it. And one of the things I found was the South African Secular Society. So they've got a couple of chapters all throughout the country. And I went to the Pretoria meetup, and incidentally, one of the guys there was giving a little small presentation on the importance of being open about being an atheist. Just kind of modeling it, because we might never know how many undercover atheists are lurking out there.
Exactly.
And to me, he kind of spurred me to step up to the challenge, and it was a very interesting experience. One of the ladies at my workplace, when we spoke about it, she just had this sense of relief on her face, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And she said to me, no, she thought that there was something wrong with her, because she couldn't understand why she was doubting all of this and everybody else seemed so happy to just accept it.
It's true. This is the whole goal of our organization as well, is to to create a sense of community and to normalize atheism in the process. We can learn a lot of lessons from marginalized communities that have traveled this road before us. For example, the LGBTQ community. There's so many marginalized communities that when they get that opportunity to go mainstream, they do. And I think atheism is in that process now, where we're going mainstream and it's becoming more acceptable, and we're not looked at as riding into town on the back of the devil with bareback nogal, Yeah, it's interesting. I always, hear the same. Okay, this is a vast generalization, but you always hear that story of people saying, I expected they were going to kick me out of the house, and then at the end of the day, people are like, oh yeah, well, that's that. You don't believe, next move. Yeah. So, what was your, sorry?
Well, my experience of that, I think I was lucky. I think some people do get the whole kick out of the house experience. Luckily, I was, out of the house already. There wasn't much that can be done about it. But a family member saw my Facebook post, and it wasn't even a very aggressive Facebook post, God is dead or anything like that. It was me saying to people, listen, if you have doubts about this, don't feel alone. Reach out, we can chat about it. You don't have to suffer on your own. And one of my family members saw that and contacted my parents and said, listen, Ben is doing the work of the devil, and you guys need to step in. You guys need to disown him or something, because there needs to be consequences. So, I mean, my parents aren't on Facebook, so that was never a concern of mine. Then they drove through. We had a sit down to just have the conversation. I couldn't even plan out how I wanted this to go. It was kind of thrust upon me, but it went pretty well. I think the big thing that I did that helped smooth it over a bit is I approached it from a perspective of, this is what I believe, and I'm not dogmatic about it. I understand you've got reasons for why you believe the things you do. I don't don't accept those reasons, and I'm open to you, trying to convince me if you wanted to, but just realize that I also have my views, and if you're going to share that, I'd also like to share some of my ideas. But it worked.
Exactly. It's not going to end
Yeah.
well. That's what he is saying. I mean, I also, like I have this, I mean, they mean well, like it took me a while to get to the stage where I said to myself, look, they don't mean any harm. They mean well, they're really concerned about my eternal soul, like, and that's why,
Exactly.
that's why you keep getting those passive aggressive WhatsApp Bible verses being sent to you with the hearts and the kisses, And I mean, after a while, you have to just be assertive about it. I just had to go like, look, I really value our relationship, like we are bound by genetics and family ties and everything. But this is an issue where I have boundaries, and you cannot step over those boundaries without consequences. So if you, in return, value our relationship, you're going to have to respect those boundaries that I've placed in there. We can talk about every single thing under the sun that you want to, but this one topic that we don't agree upon does not need to define our relationship.
Absolutely.
And ever since that talk, it's been hunky-dory. No more Bible, WhatsApp, and everything, because I think they realize at the end of the day that, this is who I am. They're not, no amount of proselytizing or begging or or concern or whatever is going to change that, but yeah, it's very interesting. I love to hear, how people, people's journey, and there's actually some horror stories out there as well. So it's we find ourselves in a position of privilege to sit here and just discuss these things as a matter of fact. Some people are atheists at the threat of their lives, and it's actually a very scary world that we live in. So what was that initial that initial seed of doubt that started germinating for you?
Man,
where did it all? What started that snowball running down the hill?
It's a pretty embarrassing story. It's like all the worst reasons possible. But yeah, I was when I grew up, I took religion very seriously. It was like a defining part of my character and how I did things. So the biggest thing I think that's kind of put me in a situation where I started thinking about this, not critically, but having a motivation to dig deeper, was when I had sex for the first time, and I felt extremely guilty about it. Growing up in an Afrikaans community, it's like I don't think everybody ever said this to me, but it was almost this assumption: if you have sex before marriage, that's a one-way ticket to hell. There's no way that you can fix that. And to me, it was so bad that this girl I had sex with, I decided to make sure that I've fixed things with my relationship with God. I'm going to get married to her. So I actually got engaged to her. Yeah.
Right.
And but I mean, this is already a situation where I knew I didn't necessarily want to be in the relationship, or didn't take the relationship that seriously. But yeah, you feel this pressure. So then I read the Da Vinci Code of all books, and in there, it's fiction trying to pass itself off as fact. But there's this whole idea of Jesus having been married, and yeah, and I'm like, no, this is interesting, and it piqued my fancy. So for the first time in my life, I actually asked myself, how do we know that what's being told in the Bible is accurate?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people grow up with this idea, God literally came down from the sky, sat down next to somebody and told them, okay, I'm going to narrate, you just write.
Yeah.
So
does anybody here in the tribe know shorthand?
Exactly. Okay, teach you guys Greek quickly. So that got me wondering, and I jumped onto Google and started, just looking at things a bit more. And one of the biggest topics that I researched was hell specifically. where does this concept of hell come from? What are the rules around this whole thing? And I was shocked when I saw just how, we've got this very clear idea growing up as Christians about what hell is and how it works. But the biblical foundation of that is flimsy. And there's a lot of theologians who have these ideas like universalism, like where everybody is going to go to the good place, or annihilationism. And that kind of just gave me enough of a sense of, okay, this isn't as serious as I thought, for me to say, okay, I can chill. I don't need to be as extreme as I am.
Yeah.
And I think that process, just that process of being in a situation where I didn't feel this immense pressure of conforming to this belief system that I had, allowed it to slowly erode over time. So I can't say there's a point where I said, okay, this is where I said, this is bullshit and I don't believe it anymore.
Right.
But over a couple of years, I got there.
Yeah. You hear the same story from everybody. Like it's never like like open the door and the second you step out, you're an atheist. It's always a gradual process of peeling away the layers of an onion before you get to the core of it. I also had this similar journey of just, for me, the linchpin was when I realized that there's more than one religion. I grew up in such a sheltered environment, like it was just, God said poof 6,000 years ago, and then there was Mudman, Rib Woman, the talking snake, and that was it. And then I started, as soon as I left my mother's house, I was introduced to the whole wide world. Like I first of all went to Durban, and then I was introduced to this girl that was completely into Hinduism, and then I explored that for a bit, and I was like, wow, not only one God, there's thousands. How do I pick? And after a while, thank goodness I never got interested in any of the other religions, because I think that culture shock was enough for my my small town Afrikaans heart to know, like, wait a minute, there's a problem here. Like not all of you guys can be right at the same time, but you can all be wrong at the same time. And then from there on, it was, like I said, that gradual process of just peeling away like layer after layer of cultural indoctrination of
to me it's all
societal rules and norms. So
to me it's shocking how long that process can take sometimes. Like I can remember literally just a couple of years ago that my sister came and she showed me a song by the band Ghost, and their whole shtick is they've got their lead singer is supposed to be the satanic pope. It's all this big, showy metal type stuff. And I didn't believe any of this, but I sat there and I'm like, oh, this shocks me a bit, because this guy is literally singing a ballad to Satan. That's weird. That makes me feel a bit icky inside. And you don't realize it until you're kind of confronted with how deep that indoctrination goes.
Exactly. It's tribal, like I think it's part of our there has to be a biological aspect to it. I'm convinced that somewhere in our evolutionary process we found utility in religion, and that utility is what propagated it. Like maybe somebody heard crack of lightning and it saved them from being killed by a wolf, and all of a sudden there's a thunder god, and that just propagated and become such an intrinsic part of people's ethos and way of seeing the world that it's evolved into this fucking big conglomerate of different worldviews. I completely lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with this. But I mean, like, in conclusion, let's just discuss, for me, when I shed that religion, like you said, like all those feelings of guilt about your morality, like it's such a long con, like religion sets up this unachievable standard. No human being can possibly attain that standard, and then it berates you for not living up to this unattainable standard. So you're caught in this perpetual cycle of feeling guilty and bad about yourself and your nature, and then it's the carrot and the stick. They wave the carrot and the donkey follows. It's that kind of thing for me. Whereas once I broke free of that, like I sort of came to be as an adult. I mean, like this was like in my, I think it was my late 20s where I finally said like, nah, this is not working for me. And during that process, like I started to learn, okay, I've got to take responsibility for my actions. I've got to take responsibility for my morality. And it just, it sort of like tripped a switch in my brain where I became more of a, I can say, a global responsible citizen of the planet, as opposed to this insulated little member of a small community in a small country on the tip of one of the continents of the world. I just started to see a bigger picture. I don't know if that resonates with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's this idea that, everything is going to be all right in the end. There's a big plan. God's going to sort it out. We don't need to worry about it. And you actually see it, especially with people who are very conservative and religious, that they kind of use this idea that, everything's in God's hands as a scapegoat for not caring about things like global warming. Even the pandemic became such a, I don't know, tribalistic issue where people, are literally can say, no, this isn't real because X, Y reasons. It's just insane. So yeah, for me, I had the same experience. I must say the thing that made a very deep difference in my life was discovering street epistemology.
Right.
Yeah, it's when I stumbled onto Anthony Magnabosco's videos and saw him. So basically, street epistemology is a technique where you go out, well, not go out. It's basically a technique that you can use in any conversation that you have about a belief that somebody holds, where you ask them questions to try and identify what the root of that belief is. And the idea there being is just going through this process allows you to, or allows them to do some introspection, which they might never have done before, about why they hold this belief. And you can use very subtle ways of just challenging that belief, asking them to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, asking them to identify things which would make them realize that they're wrong. And watching Anthony go through this process, for me at least, kind of triggered that own, or taught me how to apply that process, but to my own thinking. And that I found extremely valuable.
Yeah. This is a funny thing now that you mention street epistemology. I always, also one of those watershed moments for me in my deconversion was when somebody like confronted me and said to me like, why do you believe? And I kept on telling them what I believe and not the reason why I'm holding it, and it actually gave me pause, and I said to myself, wait a minute, do I actually have a good reason to believe all this nonsense? And it was like a watershed moment, and from there on, it was literally a road downhill. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, my introduction to SE is just completely seeing a couple of YouTube videos and that kind of thing. But isn't this based on something called Socratic questioning? It has its roots like in some Greek school of thought or Roman school of thought. I'm not exactly sure, maybe.
Yeah. It's from the philosopher Socrates, so the Socratic method. Yeah. And I think it's based in the writings of Plato, where Socrates, the character in the books, went, and if he had a debate with somebody, he wouldn't approach it as, listen, you give me your facts, and then I'm going to refute them, and I'm going to give you my facts, and then you're going to see the light, and you're going to finally believe the right thing.
Right.
So what Socrates does is he asks questions. He digs deeper. And in some ways, you can almost see them as leading questions, where if there's some, let's say, some conflict or some tension between the two positions that somebody holds, he doesn't go and point it out and say, listen, these two things are in conflict. He asks questions to help that person realize it themselves.
Right. So it's basically like an inside job.
Yeah, It's like Inception, you know. You're going to go plant that there. As soon as the guy realizes it's not him
Exactly.
who thought about it, you're in trouble.
But those are the most powerful realizations, like when you come to it by yourself, you realize that, like you've come to realization. It's not necessarily somebody else leading you into a different direction or telling you how to think or what to think. It's like when you come to a realization by yourself, it's very powerful.
Yes. And another
I
thing which I found was
Yeah.
just by asking those questions, some people pick up on what you're doing immediately. Not that the fact that you're trying to dissuade them or anything, but just this process that you're going through. And then it's like they're stunned. They're like, why have I never thought of this? Why have I never dug into my beliefs? One of the
Exactly.
guys I spoke to recently, um, he was explaining something to me, and then he stopped himself and said, I just need to think about what you're going to ask me next. I know what you're going to ask me next. And I'm like, my job here is done. As soon as somebody can ask themselves those questions,
Yeah.
you don't need to do anything further.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, man. Um, uh, and how did you get started on doing these SE conversations? Did you just one day decide, wait a minute, let me just grab a camera and go for it, or was it like a process of planning and plotting and strategizing? Or
I got annoyed by how many of the videos online are Americans. I'm like, come on, guys, we can't just leave this to all the bloody Americans. So I decided, no, I really want to go do this, and I just got myself a little clipboard. If you go and watch the videos, you'll see there's a bunch of different toys that the guys use when they go out.
yeah.
I just kind of needed something to hide behind, so I got myself a clipboard. Double purpose. I look official, and I can hide behind it. And
Yeah,
I didn't even take any recording equipment. I just went to our local university and approached someone who said, "Hey, I'm talking to people about things they believe. It'll take 5 minutes of your time. I'm going to ask you questions to very gently challenge those beliefs. Would you be interested?" And I was, blown out of the water when somebody said yes. Uh, yeah. And I wrote a little blog post for the Street Epistemology website. And
right.
after that, Anthony Magna Bosco contacted me directly, which is like,
Yeah.
okay, this is meeting a rock star. This guy was, to me, a role model. And yeah, that definitely gave me that extra bit of motivation to go out and actually record some of the conversations.
Yeah. No, amazing. I mean, I've watched a couple of them, and it's I don't know. I think my motto in life should be not "I think, therefore I am." It should be "I doubt, therefore I am." Because there's nothing more glorious than to see somebody's face. Like it's not like a crisis, but it's like you see there's a question mark on the face, and then it turns inward, and you can see people are thinking like, hey, wait a minute. It's glorious. I wish that upon every single person, that there be at least one moment in their life where something deeply held gets questioned, and they actually evaluate their motivations for having it and maybe change their mind or continue on, with the same thing. But that's a very valuable life experience to have that, and some people approach not necessarily only life, but like these, big questions like what is my reason, and then all of a sudden they invent these things, and without good reason, and for me it consumes so much of people's time. I'm saying to
Mm,
myself, if I add up every single 2 hours every single Sunday that I had my ass dragged to church, I could have had like at least three or four holidays overseas by now.
yeah. Yeah, the big
Excuse me.
concern
Yeah.
that I have.
It's just the amount of time and effort that it consumes, and money. The all-powerful creator of the universe loves you, but he needs money. Like George Carlin said, he just can't handle money.
Yeah.
That's a low hanging fruit, yeah, but I had to throw it in there.
Yeah, the big concern that I have around religion is I don't like this whole idea of somebody giving you a recipe. And
Yeah,
this recipe is, you're never going to challenge it. You're just going to be cooking the same old bland bolognese for the rest of your life. That comes back to what we talked about, never actually going through that consideration of what you want to achieve.
yeah,
And and I don't think this is everybody, but for a lot of people, it also puts them in a situation where they are convinced that they have to believe certain things, they have to think about things in a certain way. And then you get this issue that we're sitting now within the pandemic, where if somebody says this is the mark of the beast, I'm not getting the vaccine. It actually has real impacts on
it
people's
does.
way
It
of
does.
thinking
Yeah,
and the choices they make.
yeah, yeah. This is the funny thing as well. Is it's the impact. It's the impact that people talk about religion like it's this innocuous little, um, you know, minor aspect of people's lives, but it actually influences every single aspect of life. People make decisions about human rights, about women's rights, about the environment, all based on their religious motivation. And um, that needs to be stripped out of our planet's form of governance, because it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, you look at some of the countries in the Middle East. It's like they're sitting on a powder keg. Like the biggest supply of oil is there, and people are looking for nuclear weapons, and then you throw in this, batshit crazy religion, and it's a recipe for disaster. I'm not surprised that some, you know, touch wood. I'm not superstitious, but I'm touching my desk at the moment. It's just such a potential for disaster when people go extreme in religion, because I think that is the thing. Gentle Aunt Bertha that goes to the church bake sale every Friday. She's not my problem. My problem are the people who take it to the extreme. Who believe
Yeah.
that they have the ear of the Almighty Creator of the universe, and and that Creator is whispering to them, "Go and mow down the infidels." Go and do another crusade. That one a couple of centuries ago wasn't didn't hit the spot. We need you to go and cleanse the land with their blood. Those are the kind of people that I'm scared of. And I think the days where religion has had the mouthpiece and we're in power with the messaging, with everything, that's come to an end. This globalized connection of the planet, I think, is the death knell for religion, because people are actually talking to one another, they're exchanging ideas, whereas 200-300 years ago people were isolated by vast distances in small little geographic pockets. And now that we can globally share ideas and connect with people, people are sort of waking up to the absurdities of religion and what it actually forces people to do and to believe.
Yeah.
But I think we're barely scratching the surface at this stage. It's still going to be. It's never going to happen in my lifetime. I don't think so.
Yeah.
It is. I've made my peace with it. I'm going to be the first infantry that goes onto the battlefield, and and the dragon lies there. Probably like 500 years in the future, they'll remember the first battles.
I will carry the flag. The one thing that I find discouraging about the whole online situation is, as I agree that it gives us the potential to connect, but
Yeah.
what kind of happens is people find, just by entering search a couple of keywords into a search engine, you can find a group of people who think exactly like you. Where
Yeah.
previously, you're caught in your society wherever you are, and if you have some weird views, there's people who disagree with you, and now you can kind of just wrap yourself in this beautiful warm little bubble of people who just cheer you for everything
Exactly.
that you already believe. So yeah, a
Yeah.
big thing that I'm trying to do in my day to day is just to keep open lines of communication, even with people
Yeah.
who I disagree with. Because as soon as
Yeah.
you go and you know cut off that communication, you become unapproachable. You
Yeah.
might be that person, like you mentioned earlier, the guy who came and asked you, why do you actually believe this? You might be the person who puts a little pebble in somebody's shoe, but if you approach things in a way where you cut off a conversation, you're never going to have that opportunity.
Yeah. 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 Look, I mean, it has its benefits, and it also has a lot of disadvantages. Like this whole culture of living online. It desensitizes us to human interaction, and
Yeah.
like just that modicum of respectability and decency in your interactions with people. I jump online and I find like a theist troll, and all of a sudden my inner troll comes out, and I'm like, and I find myself, upon reflection, I say to myself, like, you would never, ever in your wildest dreams say these kind of things to a person face to face. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And and those are the moments where I step back and I say to myself, yeah, no. This is a sign of, just being desensitized to human interactions. And I think that's the one of the cons to, like this whole online movement, is that we start to devalue actual human interactions, and those are the things that we gravitate towards. Like, we as a species, we gravitate towards authenticity, and we love interactions that are real and authentic. I think this whole age of media and commercialization, and everybody's trying to sell you something around every corner, has created that culture for us where we relish something that is authentic, that's real, like interaction with another human being.
Yeah.
And what happens is the online community dulls you to that, because there's no consequences, no social consequences to actually like telling somebody, hey, you're doers, or whatever.
Yeah. And there's such a nice little pump of dopamine when you do that. So yeah, that's difficult.
It's true. Like, there's social media is addictive, like there's no lie about it, like and it's like any drug. Some people can use it today and go to work tomorrow, be fine. Other people will spend like 10 years like pouring pouring their hearts and their souls into it, like completely being absorbed by it. But it's strange, like you said, that dopamine hit that you get from interactions. There was a study that they did. I think the details elude me, where like they measured this, like, and as soon as people get interactions on their posts, be it positive or negative, like there's an immediate increase in these pleasure hormones that our brain releases. Like it's very strange. Yeah, you got to love it or hate it, but I think this whole social media thing is going to be with us for a couple of decades or centuries at least to come.
The good news is, at least, every new
Yeah.
platform comes out, eventually somebody decides, no, this is just for old people, and they move on to the new one.
To the next one.
So,
Yeah.
so there's an insight for Facebook and all of these one day.
Yeah. So what's next for you? Ben, are you? I see that. Are you gonna do some more SE videos? When the pandemic finally eases up a bit and it's a bit more, easier to go and have conversations with people. Where did you recruit these people? Did you do them mainly on campus, or was it?
Yeah, I mainly went to the University of Pretoria. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it looks like young people are much more approachable if you stop them, that they're not just like, I know, what's this BS? Yeah, I think for me going forward, I really like going out, but yeah, it's taxing, because you're standing there for a good 4 to 6 hours on a Saturday, trying to, flagging down strangers and waiting to get somebody who can actually chat to you. And what I did during the pandemic is I met a guy online. I think it also started with one of those good troll comments where I couldn't stop myself. And afterwards I felt bad. I reached out and said, no, sorry, I didn't mean this. I don't want, I didn't want to offend you, anything like that. And we started having a conversation, and he said, what Would you be willing to find out if you're wrong? And I've said, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about it. And we have these weekly little Skype sessions, and that I
Yeah.
found really, really rewarding.
Yeah.
Because the goal there wasn't to do SE and challenge the guy's beliefs, but just in the way that we interacted. He explained what he believed to me. I asked questions where things didn't make sense to me. I tried to explain my point of view, and it became much more organic than a street epistemology interview where you're trying to squeeze in 5 minutes as much as you possibly can, hoping the person has a reaction that's worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll definitely, I want to try and have more of those where you can kind of see the growth. And I also think it's more useful for people who want to try and use street epistemology in their day-to-day conversations, because most people aren't going out and flagging down a stranger. There's people they know, they need to work in considerations for not damaging the relationship, that type of stuff. And I
Right.
think
Right.
a more long form format is better at demonstrating how you can go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, I find it fascinating. It's impossible to view any of these street epistemology conversations without without getting completely involved and engrossed in the conversation. Because the questions are, you basically answer them yourself. And you basically mirror how these questions work on a person. It's like I said earlier, I just love that, that question mark on the face. That's the that's the thing that I want to go for. But Ben, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, for your time, and I'll post a link to your channel under the description here. And let's hope you can get out there and do some more of them. They were really great to watch.
Thanks so much, Dean. Really appreciate it. And thank you again for having me. It was good fun.
Amazing. Thank you so much.